This is our first chapter out of the Photoshop segment of the class. We are in Project 1, Composite Movie Ad. We will be beginning Stage 1 shortly. I assume that everyone has taken a few moments to go through the user interface section at the front of the book, which is going to give you some explanations for how everything works in Photoshop if you have not used it before. We are going to be working with raster images, which we only dealt with very shortly in Illustrator. Remember that while a vector graphic can be scaled up or scaled down without losing any definition, a raster image or a bitmap image is resolution dependent. You can typically reduce a raster image, but you cannot enlarge them without losing image quality, which is why we don't design things like logos in a Photoshop format. There is a lovely section in here on page 25 that deals with screen ruling, which is something you should know and be aware of. This particularly for students who are continuing on in graphic design. There's an example in the book of a grapevine that's printed at 300 pixels per inch and one that is printed at 72, and you should be able to notice a slight difference between the quality. We are going to begin by opening and resizing an image. You should be in Photoshop and go to File, Open, and select your WIP folder and select your movie folder and open the file called Bricks. If you do not have your rulers available, please go up to View and click on your rulers so you can see them. It is going to be very helpful in this. As you can see, this is a very large image. We're going to go into image size, and we're going to look at exactly what size this image is. We are 37.5 inches wide, 50 inches tall, with a resolution of 72. We need a 300 pixel per inch image for printing, and we certainly are not going to need anything that is 37.5 inches. That's very large. What I'm going to show you is how this works, and you can watch the video and not do this on your own, because you're going to do it and then undo it again anyway. So let me show you. If I change my resolution to 300 pixels, did you see how in the proxy how fuzzy this has become? You can move this around. We can find any section of the image. In fact, if I take this all the way over to the side, which is a long way to go, zoom out a little bit. Okay. That's 100%. Do you see how fuzzy this is? Because I left the image at 37.5 inches wide, 50 inches tall, and I have resample selected. That means that the computer is generating more pixels, and that pixel generation is not going to be perfect. Okay, you can't enlarge something this size without having an issue. Do not believe all of these enlargements that you see on television, in the movies. It is fictional. Yes, we have some great algorithms, but Photoshop cannot replace items that weren't there to begin with. We are going to click off now the resample, and again at 100%, because what has happened is Photoshop has taken all of the information that we had and just kind of shared the pixels a little bit, so that we have combined those pixels from 72 pixels per inch. Now we're packing 300 pixels in that same inch. I don't know how I got 300.1. It should be 300 even. we now have a 9 by 12 inch image. So the same number of pixels have just been condensed into a smaller picture. If we open this up in something that's not going to control the size of the picture, if you open this up in, well, it's kind of a big file. It's really a big file to email, but if you emailed this to someone and attached it to their email, this thing is going to take up all the room on the computer, and you'd have to scroll to see the whole thing because it would open up the number of pixels, not to this size in inches. And the screen wants 72 pixels in an inch. And so this would spread it out quite a ways. We are not going to resample this. We're going to resize it so that it is a 9 by 12 image at a resolution of 300, and we're going to say OK, and take a good look at this picture. Didn't change at all. Still the same. The only thing that happened, look at our rulers. The rulers moved to reflect the new size. We're going to save this file as Aftermath, and my default popped up as being a JPEG because that's what this picture was. We are not saving this as a JPEG. A JPEG will not support layers, and we need layers. So we are saving this as a Photoshop document. According to the book, we are going to be creating a magazine page that is a letter size sheet. It is an 8.5 by 11 inch finished trimmed product, and we need to design with an 1/8 inch bleed all the way around. Now, Photoshop is different from Illustrator. We don't have the luxury of specifying an artboard size and then adding bleed area to it. We are going to have to remember to add our bleed area first, and then we're going to crop this image down to the correct size. So we need to add that 1/8 inch all the way around. So our width is going to be 8 3/4 inches, and our height is going to be 11 1/4. We're going to pick up the crop tool, and when you click on it, you should get this lovely marquee going all the way around your image, and we're going to zoom into this quite a ways so that we can actually see what we're doing and get a good amount of space here, because that's such a tiny amount. We want to be at exactly at 8.75. Lovely. And then we'll scroll down either to the top or the bottom, grab the center handle on this side, and let's do the same. There's the center. We'll do the same thing. Zoom in quite a bit so that you get a good look at this, and we're going to drag up to 11 1/4. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out. Whoa. Well, it won't let me pick up any of the other tools until I go ahead and crop. So let me go ahead and crop that. And no, I didn't want to do that. Oh darn. Because now I just cropped in the wrong place. So I'm going to undo what I just did and go back in and recrop this. Fortunately, you have quite a number of undos in Photoshop as well. So let me zoom back in again. And I'm going to take this back down to 8.75. And when you're zoomed in this tight, you're actually at the pixel level, and that's what all those little squares are that you see is the actual pixel itself. And I'm using my shortcut key, which is the same as it was in Illustrator. It is the Control Spacebar and holding down my Alt key to zoom out. So I want to zoom back out so I can actually see my entire image again. I'm using my spacebar to grab my hand tool, so I can slide this around because I want to center the crop. I don't want this off to the side. I want my crop centered. So I'm going to slide my image around to try to center this, and don't be afraid to use your arrow keys to help you slide the image around. It is very helpful. Once you get that relatively centered on there and decide that is exactly where you would like to crop, you can then go ahead and hit your enter key, or you can click the accept button at the top of the page. It's the commit current operation. Next, we're going to define a page grid with non-printing guides. Show us where the trim line is. So we're going to go to View, New Guide Layout. And we do not really need to have a whole bunch of columns. So we're going to take off the columns and the rows, and we're just going to select margins. In our margin field, we want to have 1/8 of an inch. So it's 0.125 in all of these. And then you can select OK. Now we have our 4 guides. We have them at 1/8 of an inch in, so those are the trim size for our final 8.5 by 11 inch file. We're going to set in a couple more guidelines. So we're going to zoom in to this corner, and by the way, I need to go back and select my move tool and get rid of my crop tool so I don't accidentally crop something down. And I am going to change the 0 point of my rulers. Right now the 0 is at the top left hand corner. I'm going to change my 0 point so it's at the intersection of my 2 guidelines. So I am going to click up here on where the rulers intersect, and I'm going to bring that down and line that up with the guidelines. Kind of hard to see because the guidelines go dark, but line those up, line the 0 points up with those guidelines. We're going to be able to now add another guideline. So we're going to click on the horizontal page ruler at the top of the page and drag this down to 1/4 of an inch. So here's my inch down here, there, so that would be my half. This is my 1/4, and you can see according to the guide markers here, we're going to try to get it right at 1/4 of an inch. Having trouble with it? Zoom in a little closer. There. We're going to do the same thing with the side. Drag that in and make that at 1/4 of an inch. Okay, we're going to reset our 0 again. Double click up in that corner, and it's going to send your 0 back to this point on your canvas. We are now going to put in a new guide using another method. We've set this back to 0, and so we're going to go into View, New Guide. We want a horizontal guide in first at 10.875 inches, and you can click OK to put that in. Let me zoom out so you can see that we should have a new guide put in. I don't see it. Yes, right down here. There's our new guide at the bottom, and we're going to do that again. We're going to do another new guide. This one's going to be the vertical guide, and it is going to go in at 8 3/75. Say OK to that, and we now have our new guidelines set. We want to go into the View menu now, and we want to lock our guides so that we cannot accidentally move them, and this is where you need to save your file.